I'm the program manager for the Trade Ally Network Northwest, and we support BPA's energy efficiency program for commercial entities, primarily in HVAC and lighting. So we are here to talk a little bit about the program. Specifically, I know a lot of you are here because BPA is starting a new rate period on October 1st, and there are some new measures that they're adding, so new efficiency opportunities, and they've changed some of the incentives. So we'll talk a little bit about that further on in the presentation. But first, I wanted to start by thanking a couple sponsors. So Bruce Hemmelman here in the striped shirt is with NIA, and they're supporting the network lighting training portion of the event. And Dan Piper in the corner here is with Energy Trust of Oregon, and they're also co-sponsoring this event. And Dan will talk about the Energy Trust program after I finish up here. So thank you both for attending and helping support this event so we could come out here to Hermiston and talk about what we've got going on. So introduce myself and Dan and Bruce and Chris Smith is part of the Trade Ally Network. He's going to be working with some folks in the other room for with mechanical sales. They've got an HRV on a van. It's the coolest thing I think I've ever seen. So super excited that they were able to join and help educate us on this new technology. And for those of you online, there will be a separate link to be able to see the hands-on HRV activity. If you want to stay with the lighting activity, this link is going to be active for the lighting hands-on. And I will put into the chat at the end of the presentations before the break, the link to the HRV van session. So that'll be coming later. All righty. So I wanted to start with something that's a little different from, I think, standard energy efficiency programs. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to go to an event in New Orleans where General Russell Honoré spoke. And General Honoré, he's the 37-year Army vet, and he was the general that the president put in charge of the Katrina recovery when FEMA went down to New Orleans and was basically failing at helping the city recover from the hurricane. And he since then became very famous, and he is now a global authority on leadership, disaster management, and climate preparation. And as I mentioned, he was the commander of the Joint Task Force in Katrina. And he spoke about his 4 leadership principles that, when I was listening to it, really felt like activities that we in the energy efficiency industry could take to heart and apply to what it is that we do to support our constituents in moving to more energy efficient solutions. So first one was do the routine things well, embrace the impossible, socialize change, and be ready to be criticized. Those are his 4 leadership principles. And he's an amazing speaker. If you get a chance to go to his website, check out some of his videos. It just he's a real person and talks to you like a real person. And there's a whole lot of hoo-ahs because he was general, but a really great speaker. So in looking at his 4 principles, I wanted to start with embracing the impossible. And from a Trade Ally Network perspective, from a BPA perspective, our embracing the impossible is that 100% of your customers, whether you're a utility or whether you're in the trade, 100% of your customers are going to select an energy efficient option that's above code minimum whenever they're doing any kind of upgrade or change in system. That's the impossible that we at the network want to help this group embrace, because we want to move to a more energy efficient solution every time there's an opportunity to do that. And the reason that BPA wants to do that is we save 100 million kilowatt hours a year from a BPA perspective, just in their commercial energy efficiency program on average. So every time that one of your customers chooses an energy efficient solution that adds to the 100 million kWh that's saved annually through this program. On doing the routine things well, this is really what the Trade Ally Network is all about. We're here to make sure that we improve skills and knowledge through workshops like this. We've got online training that's available 24/7. We've got technical expertise in advice and support. I think everybody in this room knows Nick Jones. He's the technical expert and advice and support for this region. And Chris is our HVAC support. And then we partner with folks like NIA and Energy Trust of Oregon to make sure that we round out all of the technical skill that is needed to move to a better solution. We've got online tools and resources. We've got marketing support materials. There's some handouts for some of the new measures at the table that we're hoping you're going to take with you today. And then we actually, through our online training, have sales and business building resources as well. So if you're trying to grow your business, if you're trying to increase sales, we've got training opportunities online to help you target those skills as well. So we're here to help everybody in this room and everybody online do the routine things well.
Great.
Yes.
Quick question on the literature required over there. If people want it, where do they get PDFs of them, stuff like that?
The PDFs for this literature will be available on our website. They literally finished the new documents and I picked it up at the printer as I drove over here from Portland last night. So they're not currently online, but they'll be online by the end of the week. So, yep. Thanks, Nick. All right. Socializing change. Why is this important? Why is it important to BPA that we have an energy efficiency program that the utilities around the region can support? The number one reason is that saved kilowatt hours is equal to adding capacity to BPA's grid. So everybody's talking about, oh, we're electrifying all the buildings, we're adding all these electric vehicles, the grid's going to collapse. Every kilowatt hour that we save through this energy efficiency program adds capacity to the grid for all of the new electrification that's going on in the region. And most importantly, until very, very recently, energy efficiency measures were the cheapest way for BPA to add capacity to the grid. Within the last 2 years, it's now cheaper to go into Central Oregon, Central Washington, put together a massive solar array and connect that to the grid. That's technically the cheapest way to add capacity now. But if you're working in energy efficiency, it specifically is helping every single customer that BPA has, that the utilities have, that each contractor in this room have. You're helping them save money in addition to adding capacity to the grid in a very, very inexpensive manner. So it's really important for BPA, and it's really important for, we hope, everybody in this room, because it's helping out our communities. Every business in our communities, in our local community that ends up getting an energy efficiency incentive, they save money. They save money, they're more efficient, and it's good for our neighbors. So that's why BPA thinks that this energy efficiency program is important, and why they have the Trade Ally Network come around to the different areas in their territory and make sure that you're aware of what incentives are available. All right, and then the last part, be ready to be criticized. We have some feedback sheets that we're gonna make sure that we pass out. So if you end up going into the other room to check out the HRV van because it's cool, please, when you're done, come back here and fill out a feedback form. We're gonna wanna get your name tag badges back as well. So make sure that you give us feedback, and also online, there will be a feedback opportunity at the end of the webinar. So let us know. If you don't tell us what we need to change, we won't change, but we want to hear your feedback and make sure that we're doing what you guys need in order to make sure that energy efficiency measures are implemented in your territory. So please let us know. All right. I'm flying through this presentation, which is great because nobody wants to hear me talk. Everybody wants to be hands-on. So starting October 1st, the new rate period for Bonneville, there are some new HVAC incentives that are going to be available. First, we wanted to highlight that the advanced rooftop control bonus payments that BPA opted in April will continue on through the next 2-year rate period. So an ARC retrofit light is $120 a ton, and an ARC retrofit full is $250 a ton. And we definitely have
Everybody knows that acronym, right? Advanced rooftop controls.
advanced rooftop controls for your RTU units.
Some sensors to your cold air return and the economizer.
Thank you, Nick. Second thing, there are new HVAC pump incentives, and they're available for both commercial and industrial retrofit and new construction. There's some information about a PEI rating, and there's a BPA efficient pumps calculator that needs to be filled out. Basically, this is if you're adding a variable speed pump to the chiller water on a massive commercial HVAC unit. So the variable speed pump, more efficient, and you can get 33 cents per kilowatt hour for new HVAC pumps. And then very similar, they've got new VFDs on pumps incentives for commercial and industrial retrofit. And it can be either electric or gas heating. So not necessarily, it doesn't have to be an electric heat situation. And then those payments are $180 per horsepower. And I'll be honest, these are brand spanking new. I'm not a pump guy. So if there are questions about pumps, going to need to talk to Chris. And I'm going to put him on the spot. Yeah. All right. Oops, too far, too far. All right. Now, the thing that I'm really excited about is BPA has really changed the way they're incentivizing heat pumps and ductless heat pumps starting October 1st. So there are stackable incentives. The base model, if the commercial building has electric resistance heat, any heat pump is going to qualify for an incentive.
As long as it has an AHRI certificate.
As long as it has an AHRI certificate. So this is like the Oprah Winfrey like response to everybody gets a heat pump. You get a heat pump. You get a heat pump. You get a heat pump. And so if all you need is an AHRI certificate, and the incentives for replacing electric resistance heat are really pretty outstanding. So it's $700 a ton for any air source heat pump, and it's $1,000 a ton for any ductless heat pump. And that's going into electric resistance heat.
And on the air source heat pump, replacing electric resistance heat, depending on the cooling BTU output of the unit, there's additional potential for $150 more per ton.
Right.
So potentially an air source heat pump that meets performance requirements isn't just AHRI listed, but also meets, say, 3.4 COP, depending on the size of the unit. The smaller units are HSPF2 and SEER2, or actually just HSPF2 requirements. As long as it meets that requirement, then you can get up to $850 a ton. So on a 3-ton unit, you're looking at 24, 25, 50. That's enough to make somebody pay attention, I would think.
And the other thing of note for this higher efficiency COP HSPF2 requirement is if it's not electric resistance heat and they move to one of these higher efficient heat pump solutions, they still get $150 a ton for an air source heat pump or $300 a ton for DHP. So there's no prerequisite for if anybody's installing one of those higher efficient solutions, they get an incentive. It's a smaller incentive, 150 for air source heat pump or 300 for a DHP, but it's nothing to shake a stick at. But as Nick pointed out, if it's electric resistance heat and you go with one of the most efficient solutions that meet the criteria, that's $850 a ton for air source heat pump and $1,300 a ton for a ductless heat pump.
And this is commercial incentives that we're talking about.
Yep, commercial. Any questions about the heat pumps? really want to make sure that everybody understands that if it's got an HRI certificate and it's replacing electric heat, it's going to get an incentive. None of these near miss scenarios that they ran into in the last period. So if a heat pump's going in and it's replacing electric resistance heat, it's going to get money.
Be commercial or residential?
Commercial.
Okay.
Yeah, commercial. All righty. And second thing that I wanted to talk about today, so BPA.
One more caveat.
Oop.
I'm sorry. One more caveat to be clear. Those incentives are the maximum that BPA offers. There is a utility in the region that does not do 100% pass through of that. OTEC takes a percentage of that. So if you're in OTEC service territory, do not go out and tell somebody they're going to get $700 a ton because OTEC has a reduced number that will be published here in the near future. So just be clear, you know, your incentive. This is the maximum. Check with your utility ahead of time. I know that Hermiston Energy Services and Unitil Electric Co-op and Benton Area and Benton PUD, whom we all have here, all do full pass through. So the incentive you see up there is the incentive that will be offered from that. And if you have questions about any other utilities, then feel free to reach out to them or me or whatever, and we'll get it figured out for you so that you're not over promising and under delivering, because we all hate to do that.
Great. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it. All right. New HRV measure. So starting on October 1st, BPA is now going to be incentivizing heat recovery ventilation. And we're going to have a nice demo of heat recovery ventilation options in the other room later. There are basically two types of conditions. There will be a retrofit where there's an existing heat pump or electric resistance heating and currently ventilates, or there's an upgrade. There will be new construction or major renovation. Note that the upgrade is not applicable in the state of Washington because that is code for new construction for the state of Washington now. So retrofits everywhere, upgrades in Oregon, Idaho, Montana. And so there are two different incentives. The tier 1 unit is up to $2 per CFM. And then the tier 2 unit is up to $3.50 per CFM. Questions on the heat recovery ventilation? All righty. We're almost done with my section, I promise. All right, new lighting incentives. So on the lighting side, there's a new calculator coming out, Lighting Calculator 6.0, that's going to be available. I think all the utilities are currently getting a chance to review and tweak that as we speak. So they've got the rest of the month. But then once 6.0 becomes available, and it depends on each utility how they configure it. But the major change that BPA is making in lighting for the next rate period is they've split TLEDs, and there are two different incentive levels for TLEDs. The type A TLED that is designed to just pop into an existing ballast, that's only going to get $2 per lamp. And honestly, if you talk to a lighting specialist, they would not recommend that particular solution, but it's quick and easy and usually pretty inexpensive. The type B C TLEDs that are designed to replace the ballast have a longer life and are a more efficient product. They've increased the incentive to $8 per lamp for the type BC TLEDs. So that'll be in the lighting calculator. Basically, you'll have to click either is it a type A or a type B, and the incentive will automatically calculate. We're really trying to emphasize, if you're not going to go with a new fixture and you're going to go with TLEDs, please select a type BC TLED. It's a more efficient product. It's a better solution for your customer, and therefore it gets a higher incentive. So that is the major change on lighting. But the second change that they're making is BPA is increasing the incentives that are available for network lighting controls. And the Luminaire level lighting controls demos that we're going to have in this room after Dan finishes talking about the Energy Trust. Any of those products qualify for the network lighting controls incentive. And Like I said, all of this is calculated in the lighting calculator. There are a million different options for pairing a LED fixture with network lighting controls. I just wanted to pull a sample for discussion here. And what I really wanted to highlight is the first line of the table in indoor less than 100 watts that have a minimum of 40% savings. You're only getting $20 per fixture. But if you add network lighting controls and include that fixture, you get an extra $50 for putting that fixture on a network lighting control solution. So your total incentive for that one fixture goes from $20 to $70. So including a network lighting control solution can increase the amount of the incentive that the business owner gets by over a factor of 2. Varies by light. So the super high wattage high bays that are down at the bottom that get 70% savings, it's a $500 incentive for the high bay fixture. It's an extra $120 for a network lighting control solution for that fixture. So, it's an extra 10%, but not as. But the point being, if you're putting in a network lighting control solution, every fixture that you're installing is going to get a higher incentive. Questions on the new lighting incentives? And as Nick pointed out, each utility is going to configure the lighting calculator to meet their individual needs. So these are the maximum incentives that would be available for network lighting controls and TLEDs. All righty, we're close. If you're not signed up as a Trade Ally in the Trade Ally Network, we really encourage you to do so. You can sign up for membership at our website, tradeallynetworknw.com, and get access to all of this material. We're going to have this training session is going to be available online within a week or so. And we will continue to update as we have more training sessions throughout the year. We've got 10 years of content that's available through our online learning system and previous webinars. I don't know how many of you attended some of our webinars that we had during COVID, but we went through various, how do you sell energy efficiency to hotels? What do you do for focusing on schools? Looking at different options that are out there. So we appreciate that your time is valuable. We try to make it as bite-sized as possible, and it's all available on demand through our website. Ooh. And I think that's what I just talked about. Visit our website. Sign up for the network membership.
Still your own thunder.
I stole my own thunder, yes. All right, and that's basically a snapshot of the website. Lighting, HVAC, if you have any questions about the incentive and you don't know who the right person is at your utility to ask that question, we have Nick, or we have somebody that looks like Nick in different regions of the territory. And we have Chris, who supports HVAC throughout the territory. And we're here to answer your questions and make sure that it's as easy as possible for you to get incentives for your customers.
In the back of the catalogs, the binders that are sitting over at the table, I brought some of you guys. Not in the very back, but towards the back, there's some pages that show my contact information and the other folks that take care of other areas around us. But for the most part, you guys are all set with me.
All right, and that is all I had. Hopefully, I didn't take too long. Dan.
I do have a question. Do you mind just going into a little bit of information about enrolling with the Trade Ally Network Northwest for my information, and if there's any Energy Trust Trade Allies that aren't a part of your network already? Like, is it a free enrollment to join the network?
It is a free enrollment. There is basically, if you take the 5 minutes to go onto our website, click on to become a Trade Ally Network, Trade Ally Network member, we will add your information to our distribution. You'll get bi-monthly newsletters. You get access to all of our online learning center information, and there's no cost. This is a service that this is a service that BPA covers. And so this is a BPA program that they pay for to make it as easy as possible for y'all to help your customers implement energy efficient solutions. So
Yes, thank you.
no worries. And unless there are any other questions, I'm gonna turn it over to Dan Piper with Energy Trust of Oregon.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, first off, I'd like to thank everybody for being here. Thank you to BPA for coordinating with Energy Trust. I'm really happy that we're able to do this kind of in tandem. I'm assuming most people in this room, if not everybody and watching online, are with BPA's Trade Ally Network. So I'm going to try to cater this presentation a little bit more towards like an overview of Energy Trust in case you're not familiar with those programs. I'll go into incentives at least a little bit, give everybody a little bit of flavor of what's out there. But cool thing for me, not being exposed too much to BPA's Trade Ally Network and incentives. I figured as much, but it's great to see that the programs have a lot of similarities. And so if you're familiar with one of the Trade Ally networks already, getting involved in a different one, Energy Trust Trade Ally Network shouldn't be too big of a leap. Will hopefully be a fairly easy thing to do. And yeah, hopefully we can continue this coordination in the future. So as Greg mentioned, my name is Dan Piper. I'm here to represent Energy Trust. More specifically, I represent Energy Trust in Northeast Oregon for their existing buildings program. So that's kind of where my focus is going to be for this presentation, but I'll talk a little bit more about this, but there's also Energy Trust programs to cover every market segment you could think of. Again, I'll talk about that more in a little bit here. In this presentation, I'm going to try to cover the dedicated support team. There really is a good team here throughout the state of Oregon. I'll give an overview of Energy Trust. I'll dive in a little bit more on the existing buildings program and at least a brief overview of the other programs within Energy Trust. I know there's electrical and lighting contractors here, so I wanted to at least talk a little bit about the lighting programs and solar programs with Energy Trust, and then we'll wrap up kind of talking about the Trade Ally Network. Which hopefully Energy Trust Trade Ally Network and BPA Trade Ally Network Northwest. Hopefully the language doesn't get too confusing or anything there. Okay, dedicated support team. First off, myself here again, as I mentioned, I cover Northeast Oregon for the existing buildings program. I'm based out of Wallowa County, but the territory I cover goes as far west as Wasco County, and then of course east to Wallowa County and down south through Malheur County. So really anything in the northeast corner of the state that's commercial related in particular, I can be your primary point of contact. With that, I did include my contact information on here as well, but also please be aware that the table kind of in the back on the side there by Greg, there's a generous stack, hopefully, of my business cards there. Please feel free to take one or multiple if you want to hand them out to technicians, people you work with, customers, and there's also some literature there. Giving some information about, we'll call it sector specific incentives for water heating, HVAC, insulation, so on and so forth. Please feel free to check that out. And it looks like there's at least a few hats still sitting back there. Please help yourself to anything back there. Okay, and so, yeah, I cover the Northeast territory, but know that I'm assuming most folks are pretty local to the area of Northeast Oregon, but just in case we have anybody traveling in, just know that if you're coming from Central Oregon or Southwestern Oregon or wherever, there's going to be a more local contact. So you don't have to talk to somebody clear on the other corner of the state. There will be somebody more local who can help you directly and work with you. Okay, kind of as an overview of Energy Trust, if you're not familiar, Greg covered a lot of great stuff as far as the importance and reason that these programs exist. He nailed it when he said that, well, it's the same thing from Energy Trust perspective as it is BPA's perspective of historically here. It's been the most cost-effective way of expanding capacity for the utility providers that Energy Trust represents is investing in energy efficient projects. That's kind of it in a nutshell. But Energy Trust of Oregon is an independent nonprofit that specifically serves the customers and is funded by these participating utility providers. Which on the electrical side, that would be Portland General Electric on the west side of the state, Pacific Power. Well, we'll jump into a map here in a second. And you can kind of see how convoluted it is. And I did see in the binders that BPA provided that they have a bunch of utility providers listed on there. That's actually probably a great note to make. If you're working with all these programs, really the first step in sorting how a project is going to go, what incentives will be available to them, et cetera, is to identify the utility providers. That's really the first step. And so if it's any of them that are in the binders, it's going BPA route. If it's Pacific Power, Portland General Electric, or the natural gas providers in the state, being Cascade Natural Gas here locally, Avista Natural Gas, and Northwest Natural Gas, that's Energy Trust of Oregon side. And I'm at least a good place to start for it. Again, if it's one of those customers, but in Central Oregon, I'm happy to put you in contact with the more local representative. And kind of as an overall arcing goal, providing access to affordable energy for all of these customers, generating homegrown renewable power, and building a stronger Oregon and Southwest Washington, which does remind me of an important point. Energy Trust of Oregon is primarily an Oregon-based organization. However, there are incentives available in Southwest Washington to customers of Northwest Natural Gas in that area, because I'm sure some of you probably work in that area, so that's something to be aware of. All right, and here's kind of a blown up view of that map that we were briefly looking at that just shows the service territory, essentially for Energy Trust. And trust me that I recognize it's broken up and not so easy as, hey, if you're east of the Cascades, it's this, west, it's that. It's all area dependent. I mean, actually, we're in a perfect example area here in Hermiston because there's multiple electric utilities right here within the city. So if you're working with a customer, again, establishing who their electric utility is at the very least will be a great way to start sorting. But know that anything natural gas related in this area is going to be CNG. If you're over in Union County, you'll hit some Avista, and coming from Columbia Gorge, hit some Northwest Natural, and any of the natural gas stuff. Please feel free to reach out to me on. All right, and so Energy Trust has invested about $1.8 billion of utility customer funds, and out of that, that's resulted in about $7.7 billion in savings over time on participant utility bills. Again, something real similar to what Greg was talking about. It really does benefit everybody. That's the cool thing about working in these programs, is there's really no downside to it. Well, okay, you got some paperwork and forms and stuff. That's maybe a downside. But otherwise, upside for everybody, whether it's your customer, the trade ally, the utility, the community. There's really a lot of upsides with that. And so that's over 720,000 sites within the state of Oregon and Southwest Washington that Energy Trust has worked with. It's about 14,500 clean energy systems, renewable power systems. So solar is the big one, but also Energy Trust can work with even small like hydroelectric projects. There's been some really cool ones actually in Wallowa County that I recently learned about. That is really neat. And that's resulted in about 24 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions kept from going into the air. So with that, I'll jump into the existing buildings program, but also, as I prefaced, there's programs within Energy Trust that will cover any market sector that you'll be working with. So I represent specifically the existing buildings program, which is, well, existing structures that are commercial or multifamily. So that's the next kind of sorting path if we're identifying the direction to go with the project. is the site type. And so if it's a duplex or larger, essentially, and an existing structure, that'll fall under the existing buildings program. But know that there's also programs for new construction. If you're working on new builds, whether it's single family homes or apartment buildings or a new Walmart or whatever it is, there's a program to cover that. There's also a residential program that focuses on single family homes, just because the energy footprint of those spaces are pretty different than commercial and multifamily spaces. There's also a process efficiency program that works with industrial customers and whatnot. So again, important thing know is if you're looking at a project, there's going to be a program available, and I'm happy to put you in contact with the program representative. All right, within the existing buildings program, and I'm assuming that's the where the majority of everybody in this room and watching online will be working. There's three basic tracks for incentives. The first one here being standard or prescriptive measures. That's where probably the bulk of your interaction with the program will occur. That will cover most of your equipment upgrades and I guess non-equipment related in the form of insulation, windows, so on and so forth. And they're more straightforward. It's you're replacing a gas furnace like for like. That's going to be a standard measure, and there's pre-written requirements for that equipment for the space in order for it to be eligible, and all of the incentives are preset. They may be tiered or something based off of capacity on the furnace or horsepower on a motor, so on and so forth, but they're all predetermined and preset. But cool thing about this to keep in mind is that projects do not have to be pre-approved to go through the standard measure. It's basically paperwork after the fact. I do recommend, if you're looking at a project and aren't super confident that equipment qualifies or the space qualifies, hey, please reach out to me, give me a call, email, text message, whatever, and I'm happy to look at the equipment, look at the space, and tell you, yep, that qualifies, or no, but if you went to a higher efficiency unit, that would qualify, so on and so forth. But again, you perform the projects, and then we do paperwork after the fact, and get an incentive check coming back to you or your customer, depending on how we handle it. The next one is custom incentives. And that's really for anything that falls outside of what the standard measures cover. And sometimes that will be equipment specifications fall outside of the limits in the prescriptive measure. Maybe a unit that you're looking to install is larger than what the prescriptive measure covers, because it makes sense for the situation. Say you're doing a pool heater somewhere, and rather than doing 200,000 BTU per hour pool heaters, they want to do a single one that's 400,000, and that falls outside of the standard measure. Well, then we can look at it through the custom lens. Or anything that's more complicated than that. Great example is HVAC controls, building management system. That would be something we'd need to look at through a custom lens, unless it's just smart thermostats, which I'm happy to get into here in a minute. But know that does involve myself and an engineer going on site, doing a full building modeling of the specific site in question and the specific equipment that you're looking at. And so it's a lengthier process, but can make sense for somebody who's looking to, budget for next year or next fiscal year, doing a big project. Not these studies usually take a year, but they'll certainly take months. And the important thing to know with that is that all of that work, that study and the energy modeling has to be done up front before procurement of equipment. So that's something important to know.
I want to make sure I heard you right on the standard practices incentives. The lighting projects don't require pre-approval?
It depends. Thank you for bringing up a point of clarification. So actually, specifically what I'm talking about here is anything in EB program except lighting, because if it wasn't confusing enough, lighting is split out differently. And I'll talk about some lighting specific information after this info about the EB program. But so know that this covers HVAC, water heating, kitchen equipment, laundry equipment, insulation, some warehouse equipment, generator stuff, forklift stuff, things like that. Pretty much everything within the existing buildings realm, except for lighting. Lighting is actually a different program.
If I haven't done any of these projects with Energy Trust before, can I submit them for pre-approval? Just have somebody look at my stuff and make sure it's okay.
So it depends on what it is. If it's a prescriptive measure that does not require or isn't offered through a closed trade ally network, we'll go with gas furnaces as an example. Because there's also some promotions with this, and really it's a longer conversation where sometimes a particular county, for example, or region in other cases, or market sector, like low income housing is a great example, will have additional or bonus incentives offered on top of that. But as far as a general across the state incentive, like gas furnaces at $7 per 1,000 BTU per hour of input capacity in a commercial setting, that anybody is eligible for. It doesn't have to be done through a trade ally of Energy Trust. Actually, the end use customer can put in the application and get the incentive check coming directly back to them. It's certainly easier to work with trade ally, and then the trade ally in most cases will do the paperwork and do the application, or all help with that. And they can offer it as an instant discount. And so the customer's not out the money and the incentive check goes to the trade ally instead. But anybody would be eligible for it. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. And then the last one being retro commissioning, which kind of falls under custom incentives, but I broke it out because we're doing a few different offerings under retro commissioning right now. And so that's focusing primarily on retro commissioning of DDC control systems. And so certainly if you're working with a customer who has a system that, I mean, I'm sure we've all seen it at this point, was installed 10 years ago and was operating great, but over that 10 years, there's been changeover in staff that manages that system. Settings have been tweaked, schedules have been tweaked, so on and so forth. And suddenly you have an area like in an event center that is used once a week, but it's at a 70-degree set point 24/7. Something like that is where retro commissioning can come in, and we can take a look at it again, do some modeling and estimate energy savings, project cost, and then offer an incentive based off of that. So with anything custom or retro commissioning, really, if you see an opportunity, a great place to start is just to reach out to me and I can initiate the process. And then, yeah, if you do controls work or it's an HVAC job that just falls outside of standard measures, then I can work with you. We can get you the job and get an incentive coming back. All right, going a little bit more into the standard incentives, because again, I'm sure that's where the majority of us will be operating. It's split out in the existing buildings program between commercial and multifamily. And in commercial, it's branched out yet again, kind of by market segment, by lodging and food service equipment, grocery or refrigeration, computer equipment, HVAC and water heating, insulation, service shops and warehouses. And then on the multifamily side, it's split out by size, essentially. Energy Trust calls it small multifamily versus large multifamily. Small multifamily being any of your plex properties, duplex, triplex, fourplex, etc. Or I think I call them row houses on here. Yeah, everybody's got a different name, but basically where you've got multiple homes lined up in a row with a shared wall is considered small multifamily. Large multifamily is exactly what it sounds like: a stack structure, apartment buildings, etc. So know that that's how that's going to be split out. And sorry, going to make sure I'm good on time. Perfect. Okay, and I at least wanted to shotgun some different common incentives up here if you haven't worked with Energy Trust before, to at least give you an idea of what's out there, because this is Since Energy Trust is just kind of joining this meeting, which I really appreciate the opportunity, I didn't want to make it necessarily a training like, hey, you're trained up as a trade ally of Energy Trust now. I wanted to offer some exposure if you aren't familiar with Energy Trust, and then hopefully get you signed up as a trade ally, and I'm happy to do more in-depth training and dive into any of these. So know that this is by no means an exhaustive list of standard measures that are available. It's just, again, a sprinkling of some of the common ones so you can get an idea of what's out there and the different incentives that are being offered. So on the HVAC side, strictly in commercial, so not multifamily, I'll get into that here in a second. There's incentives for mini split AC units in server rooms, like small server room in an ESD office, something like that. If you're doing a new RTU, there is advanced rooftop control incentives, like they were talking about in the last presentation. Also, if you're doing a new RTU that includes an economizer or demand control ventilation or has a variable speed supply fan, there's incentives there. VRF systems, they're definitely getting more common in Northeast Oregon. I'm not sure if anybody here is installing those systems or working on those systems, but it is a good technology, and we're offering, it's actually per square foot of area served, $1 per square foot for VRF systems. Commercial ductless heat pumps, $300 per ton. IR heaters, if you're looking at, warehouse shop setting, can be a great solution. If it's a modulating one, you get up to $2.25 per kBTUH of input capacity. Again, commercial gas furnaces, steam traps, boilers, boiler burners, chute recirculating pumps on hydronic systems. There's really a wide variety of available things just under standard or prescriptive measures. And I'd be happy to, if anybody, even if you're interested in learning more before signing up as a trade ally and would like to just see the full list of standard measures that are out there, you can certainly find that information on the website, or if you don't feel like trying to navigate through the website to find a list, please grab a business card of mine, reach out to me. I'm happy to send you that full list or any other information. I did want to include on here what I mentioned earlier of smart thermostats, because that is a new offering from Energy Trust as a standard measure. That in commercial settings, adding a smart thermostat, you get an incentive $400 per thermostat, which that incentive is really designed to cover, hopefully, the full cost or nearly the full cost of the installation of that. As a quick note, grocery sector, so any grocery store will be eligible for $500 per, battery's running low. I might have to step it up here. But $500 per thermostat in a grocery setting, just because you have all the cooler cases, freezers, so on and so forth. But that, and on that note, Greg covered a bunch of new incentives through BPA, and it sounds like they roll out a lot of new incentives at the beginning of October. Energy Trust in general will be at the end of the calendar year. So January 1st will be the new incentive rates and most of the new measures. Once in a while, there's a mid-year addition like the commercial smart thermostats, which if that is the case, thank you, Craig. You're good. If that is the case, I'll be reaching out to you, or your local representative will be reaching out to you with, hey, there's a new measure. Here's the information about it, so on and so forth. I'm sure there's a lot of folks in here doing water heating projects, and I included pumping because I know there's some electrical contractors here as well. Again, sounds similar to some updates with BPA, which is awesome. But condensing tank or tankless water heaters will be incentivized, as well as heat pump water heaters in electric territory. And then also pretty much any general commercial pump adding a VFD to it, or as long as it's a new pump, actually that includes a VFD. And hopefully, if anybody's looking at like the new smart pumps and stuff that are coming out, as of today, that's not included in this measure, but hopefully it will be in the future as there gets to be more information about those smart pumps and whatnot coming out. On the irrigation side, if anybody's working a lot with farmers, it can be new or retrofit for an existing pump, adding a VFD to it. Okay, multifamily. And it's going to be similar, but the incentives and the requirements are going to be a little bit different, again, just because the different energy consumption of the site. But again, there's going to be incentives available for pretty much anything that you're looking at, whether it's on the hydronic side, looking at boilers, steam traps, radiator valves, so on and so forth, or gas furnaces. There's even gas fireplace incentives in small multifamily, as long as it meets certain efficiency requirements. PTHPs and ductless heat pumps, there's incentives as well as smart thermostats. Also water heating incentives available on the multifamily side. Again, similar, but a little bit different. And I didn't get into swimming pool stuff so much on the commercial side. If there's anybody in here that does work a lot with aquatic centers or what have you, there's quite a few different incentives available for aquatic centers and swimming pools, heaters, covers, et cetera, et cetera. And again, please feel free to reach out to me about any of this, and I'd be happy to provide more information. Okay, the lighting and solar programs. Again, I apologize, I didn't really clarify earlier that they are separate programs, and as well, frustrating and confusing as it can be of, you're splitting up even here in this meeting between Energy Trust customers and BPA customers. And then if it's an Energy Trust customer, it's split between these different programs. And sometimes the programs have sub programs. Really, my best recommendation is reach out to your Energy Trust contact and just chat with them about the project, the site. I'm totally comfortable, especially if you're within the territory that I serve. If you want to give my contact information to estimators that you have or technicians, people who are going out and actually looking at jobs, where they call me and say, hey, this is what I'm looking at, what's available. I'm happy to walk through that and try and find a good solution. But on the lighting and solar front, well, first, a warning that I don't work directly with these programs, so I'm certainly less knowledgeable about them. I'm learning more every day. But if you have any specific questions, I mean, feel free to ask me now or after the meetings. And if I don't know the answer, I can put you in contact with somebody who can give you the answer. So with a couple different offerings with the lighting program, there's, I'll call it the main one or the most common one that I've seen with customers that I'm working with, that's offered through a closed trade ally network. And so this is what we were talking about a little bit earlier, where the contractor will actually go in and use a lighting calculator, a lighting tool, probably something similar to BPAs. I haven't seen BPAs, but I'm guessing, a lot of the similar information. So if you're already doing that, hopefully this isn't going to be too daunting of a task to look at. There's LED incentives for retrofit lamps and fixtures, including interior, exterior, high bay, low bay, cooler, freezer cases, and street lighting. And what wasn't on this list that I just saw get approved a few months ago was for sign lighting too. So I don't know if anybody here works with, signs, like on this building out here, but there's incentives available there, at least in some cases. And then definitely on the control side as well, vacancy and occupancy sensors, there's incentives for those. But that is through a closed trade ally network. So it's not, if you own this event center and you go through and hire Joe Blow to replace the lights, you can't then fill out paperwork and try to get an incentive after the fact. It has to be done up front with an Energy Trust trade ally. The other tract here is the instant discount. They call it the midstream offering, where, like it says here, great for smaller projects. It's actually through participating distributors, where you or your customer could go and actually purchase lamps or fixtures straight from the distributor, and you get the instant discount, and Energy Trust pays the distributor for these efficient lighting options. The solar program is actually the only program that I'm aware of, at least with Energy Trust, that is offered strictly through trade allies. So there's not like a regional or market representative like myself for the solar program. It's directly through participating trade allies. And the program can provide support for a lot of things, but funding and procurement for these projects, also doing calcs and energy saving projections, so on and so forth. Incentives are available for both new construction and existing buildings. And the current rate is 15 cents per watt with up to $15,000 maximum per project. Okay, double checking. Okay, I'm getting low on time, so I'll try and go speed round here. But wanted to give everybody an idea of the Trade Ally Network. Again, probably pretty similar if you're already with BPA's Trade Ally Network. But yeah, I got to talk faster. Sorry. There's over 1,800 contractors enrolled in the program right now in Oregon and Southwest Washington. There's a lot of good benefits to being a trade ally of the program. Here's some of them. A great one being business leads. So Energy Trust has a lot of, I'll call them field staff like myself that are scattered across the state working with different programs, et cetera. And talk a lot with end use customers. And anytime that I or one of my colleagues is working with an end use customer and they're looking for an HVAC contractor, an insulation contractor, et cetera, we're always going to refer them to trade allies of the program. Also, cash incentives. I mentioned this a little bit beforehand, but some of the offerings, like if there's a regional promotion going on where it's a bigger discount on a gas furnace, say, that might be only deployed through trade allies. But again, the other ones, the more basic and open standard incentives, we can work with the end use customer. So I'm happy to work with you on whatever works best on your end. If you want to offer the incentives as an instant discount to your customer to provide a more competitive bid or just help out your customer, we're happy to do that. And Energy Trust will then pay the incentive directly to you. Or if you want to just put me in touch with your customer, I can work with them on the back end, try and get them an incentive as well. There's also a lot of opportunities for specialized training and technical assistance. Definitely something I want to hit on, and I'll cover a little bit more in another slide, is business development funds. Also, the Trade Ally Network Insider is like a newsletter and website with a lot of good information and training opportunities and incentive updates, so on and so forth, that goes out. And if you're enrolled as a Trade Ally, you can opt to get this sent right to your email. Yeah, here for business development funds. So in short, Energy Trust makes a certain amount of funds. Well, it's $3,000 per calendar year available to anybody who is a trade ally of Energy Trust. And that can be used for about anything that helps you progress your business, whether it's marketing, like doing radio ads or newspaper ads, or tools. You have a new tech coming on and you want to buy some tools for that person. Business development funds can cover that. Even things like software, if you're looking to get a new accounting software or HVAC capacity software, whatever it is, can pay for that, or even training on said software. So it's really, especially for this year, Energy Trust has really opened it up, which is a great thing. I encourage you, if you're a trade ally now and have not taken advantage of those funds for this calendar year, I encourage you to reach out to me and we can make it happen. And I am sure I am out of time. So I guess one last thing here is the website, another great marketing opportunity in that it has a really pretty user-friendly sorting feature for finding contractors. It's just called Find a Contractor tool and can sort by profession or equipment or distance to the customer. It's a pretty good thing.
Let me introduce myself. We'll talk here, but I'm going to talk about network lighting controls. So my name is Bruce Hemmelman. If we have not met in the past, for the last 20 years, I've been the Lutron rep. So I worked for Lutron, was a Lutron rep, and retired a year ago. And Evergreen Efficiency brought me on to talk to the same customer base about things that we did in the past, and talk about successes, talk about things that we did. And today, what we're going to talk about is network lighting control, specifically luminaire level lighting controls. And I'm going to curtail my presentation to you guys a little more because it's a little bit generic, and it's meant for a shotgun blast. But, let's try and get as much out of this as possible. You've got a lot of history between the two of us, and hopefully you guys got a chance to meet Dustin. And great opportunity for us to spend some time together and just learn through some things. So that being said, I am here representing NEA, so the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance. You can see all of the PUDs that we work with, and we cover Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana. And surprisingly, have been doing a lot of work over here between the Tri-Cities, Lewiston, Clarkston, and some areas that we find that Seattle and Portland have been very progressive, and it's coming this direction very quickly, especially when you look at, your guys' inclusion with all the data farms and some of those things and the stuff that's going to come behind it to support it. These are all things that you need to be aware of. So we're going to start off with talking about the objectives that we have as NEA. And we use the acronym LLLC, and that's Luminaire Level Lighting Control. Basically, what it comes down to is every fixture has an integrated sensor for occupancy daylighting and the ability to communicate with other fixtures. Okay. Additionally, you'll hear us talk about network lighting control. Very, very similar, but not at an individual fixture level control. Okay. So the biggest part, what we're doing out here, especially out in Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington, is making sure that everyone understands what LLC is. As that goes and we explain it and you kind of grasp the concept, sales come along with it. We're able to get the channel behind it. For instance, Platt Electric, North Coast, Crescent, Gray Bar are all stocking LLC integrated fixtures today. So things that you could, when you're working on a project, you're like, hey, we're 8 weeks out. Today it's going to be delivered in 2 days. A considerable leap ahead as this is accepted in the market. Okay, so besides having a conversation today and talking and introducing the project, we're going to take you back at the end and let you put your hands on a couple of different systems and get a feel for it. We are not here. NEA is not here to endorse any particular system. What I would encourage you to do is you have a preferred distributor and you probably have a preferred agent, or they do, or a group of products you work with. And the fact of the matter is virtually every major agent and distributor has a relationship and a partner that's doing LLC today. And so you've got those assets available to you in addition to Nick Jones, and the BPA teams. Okay. So hopefully this doesn't come as a surprise to you. This is we look at this and we laugh about the old school, how we used to do it, where we started off with fluorescent ballasts and now it's LED drivers, but wired occupancy sensors and daylight sensors, LED fixtures and wired installations. And you installed it where they drew it. And if they asked you where to draw it, you came out and tried to make a decision and put it in the best case. And I will tell you, universally, your aux sensor and the sprinkler will always go in the exact same spot. And whoever installs it first gets it put in. They get Gibbs, and the HVAC guy puts it directly where you were going to run your wiring through. And and I don't know if they're using BIM out here yet. In collision detection, that's a hot thing right now, where the designers model the entire building. But it still comes down, you can model it all day long. The plumbing guy puts it 6 inches away from where he thought it was. You're going to work around it. But this is how it used to be. In a lot of cases, and what's kind of interesting, we walk into the room today, your lighting controls in this room is a light switch. In fact, we're 3-way light switches, which is kind of nice, but we walked in the no occupant sensor. We were trying, so Mr. Building guy, how old is this building? We were trying to,
16.
okay, so, which surprised all of us because I do not believe this meets Oregon code. There might have been some value engineering, and there you go. But this is what we used to have, and You would rely on the engineer, you would rely on your guys in the field to say, hey, make this work. And and it came down to it became very, very hard to labor and saves from there. Today, the world's changed. Now you're looking at sensors that are integrated in the fixtures. You're looking at a sensor that's the size of a quarter, can do almost the exact same work that a sensor this big did 5 years ago, and a daylight sensor and an address. And today, between your integral sensors, the fixtures all have digital drivers that, if you think about it, all have IP addresses, and we use I use that term to, it's an easy describable, but a dolly address or a digital address, every device, every light fixture in this room is individually controllable. And we're able to go from there, and we're able to network it. And what's kind of funny is I was hoping some of the HVAC guys would stay in here, because there are very few projects and new projects today that the lighting controls don't control the HVAC. Well, they use our aux sensors, and they use our ability to track things, because lighting's everywhere. I know HVAC is as well, but lighting's everywhere. And I can tell you now how many people are in this room by using the sensors, and they can count the bodies. Kind of an interesting note, and we were able to work it that way. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about Nick brought up when we were talking about network lighting controls and systems. But what you're going to usually see is, in a lot of cases, simple projects. Simple projects are, hey, it might be a simple office. I have an occupancy sensor and maybe a wall dimmer. Depending on how big the space is, it might be an occupancy sensor now and a daylight sensor and a wall box dimmer, or some combination thereof. All of those traditionally have been, hey, it's an individual setup, very standard, very, very simple, and we move forward. Today, what we're looking at is a little bit larger projects. Maybe we want to say, hey, we're going to control groups together. We're going to do some of those things. But what we're also asking for is, can I control plug loads today? Which in receptacle control has become a hot item. I don't know if they're enforcing that out here. Are you guys seeing it in Eastern Oregon yet? Mm-hmm. Yep. So plug receptacles and power packs and those kinds of things. But additional things is bringing in third-party commissioning. Washington's new code just said if any new large commercial project that has a network lighting system has to be commissioned by a third party or reviewed by a third party. That's kind of a big thing. And so these are all things that we're going, but expanded systems are where the world is kind of coming to be. Nick had, or Greg had a great point today, that one of the premises, or one of the things that we are working on, is to get above code in every project. On the lighting side, that's going to be very easy. You're probably already internally designing. If you're doing a design to build, you know what code is. You know what they're going to enforce. You know what they're going to ask for. And then you come in and say, hey, what are we doing new and exciting? So let's go through a couple of these real quick, so you guys get a feel for, maybe there's some things in here that you're not doing today, but we're going to show you how to do really, really easily. So occupancy sensing, is vacancy big out here yet? Occupancy sensors versus vacancy sensors. And and maybe a better question, do you guys know the difference? Great. And this is kind of an interesting one. So a vacancy sensor, you walk into a room and it doesn't turn the lights on. You have to walk over, turn the switch on, and then the occupancy sensor turns it off. So it's manual on, auto off, where an aux sensor is auto on, auto off. Bathrooms are great for auto on, auto off. So if you can't reach a switch because you're in a bathroom stall, the lights don't turn out, you can wave and turn them on. But if I came into this room this morning and I'm just setting up chairs, this is enough light right now. I make the decision, if I'm a south-facing office, I make the decision to turn the lights on. The other one that we laugh about, and you guys, as soon as we bring up vacancy sensors, you're going to start going, oh, that's a great idea. If I told you never had to go back to look at an aux sensor because the teacher said, I leave my classroom, I turn the lights off, and the next teacher that walks in, the lights don't turn on. Your occupancy sensor is faulty. No, it's doing exactly what you told it to do. It's never timed out. It thinks you went into AV mode. It hasn't timed itself out. So whenever we would do a school, we'd go to the teachers and tell them we're changing everything to vacancy for your ease of, control. But vacancy sensors, if you're not using them today, you're going to be adopting this code very soon. And we put the onus on the space user to decide whether they want to do it. Continuous stimulus or daylight harvesting is exactly what you think it is. Daylight harvesting, but traditionally what we have thought of as the lights closest to the window is what we call the primary daylight dimming zone. Very, very quickly and very soon, you're having a secondary zone, and we're calling it a tertiary zone. So it used to be you drop the window into the room, and anything within the window was a daylight zone. Now we're having a secondary, we have a tertiary. These are things you got to start thinking about. And now we're having to zone them accordingly. Are you guys familiar with high-end trim and task tuning? Okay. This is a great one, and it's an easy one. And this is one of the things where network lighting controls, and we talked about retro commissioning a second ago. High-end trim is basically, I'm going to come into this space, this one right here where we are. Okay. It's almost blinding in here, the glare bomb in here. So let's assume all these fixtures are dimming. And you go back in and you're working with your customer and say, hey, we took out a bunch of fluorescent, put in a bunch of LED. And we don't need nearly as much light as we did before because of the output of the LEDs. High-end tuning is I walk in and I just dim the lights and I say, your 100% level now is 85%. So the wall dimmer, no one knows. No one knows. They walk in and everything in the space is dialed to 85%. So I gotta ask you two, you know how much effort that makes on you? You walk to your computer and you open it up, you type 85, you press send, and it goes out. All joking aside, I mean that very, very seriously. When we do schools in Portland, what we would do is we'd wait for the opening of school and we'd start at 15% down. And every Friday we would lower it by 5% until someone complained. And then we knew what that level was. But if I went in and set it at 15% out of the gate, I can turn around and say, I can show you that I just saved you 15%. And you know how much effort Blue Mountain put in? Virtually none. But you picked up 50% savings in an entire building. Okay. Something that's kind of interesting and is definitely something to discuss. In a case like this gentleman out here, if you were in this open area, you could drop that to 85% and no one would ever know. Yet the space that's 24/7 is now 15% down. Okay. Other things, but we can do. The last is zoning. Zoning today is kind of interesting. Let's say this is a classroom. And I've got a daylight zone on the wall, but I've also got a teaching wall. And when Greg and I were in school, I'm looking at everybody else. When Greg and I were in school, they were whiteboards, or chalkboards. Today, it's all AV. Today, a teacher wants to hit a button and the lights in front of the AV turn off and everything else in the room stays on or at some level. Okay. If they come to you, Blue Mountain, do you know how many zones would be in this room already? Yeah, you're doing some quick calcs. You're looking at 5 or 6 zones. And traditional traditional wiring means I'm going to pull 6 or 7 zones back to a panel, and I'm going to program it. Oh, yeah. You can quickly see how some of these things come up. And we're going to and I'm prefacing this, I'm prepping this so you understand why this all of a sudden Luminaire level lighting control all of a sudden starts making a lot more sense, where every fixture is individually controllable. So we talked about a lot about those kind of opportunities, and you can see this. You know, this is how we as a general rule will determine what we can do with this. You know, you're looking at daylighting sensors, and you can see why some of these systems that are being written into code have become very important. You know, we're able to get a significant amount of savings just by using what's available today and being a little bit smarter than the system was going to be. Okay, so let's make the assumption that we're interested in talking about Luminaire level lighting controls. Okay, and let's say, for sake of argument, this gentleman comes to you and says, "Hey, I read about this, and I want this conference room to be changed out to Luminaire level lighting controls." What are some of the benefits besides what we just talked about? Well, some of the things, asset tracking. I don't know if you guys if this has become a hot thing for you right now. You may not care, but I will tell you the folks at Umatilla do. I will tell you the folks at every one of your hospitals do, and your schools are. Everybody know what an Apple tag is? Okay. Think about it like this. If I had an Apple tag and it's underneath that fixture, I can now tell my computer at the front of the gate that wheelchair, that AED, that AV equipment that's got that Apple tag, I can tell you exactly where it's in. It's Mrs. Jones' classroom. It's in the back under the second fixture. Or, hey, that wheelchair that we need, that crash cart, is on the third floor at the other end of the corridor. Send someone to go get it. Okay. But I can use the lighting system now to track that. If you think about it, I've got sensors throughout my building. Everywhere you have a light fixture, now you have an ability to track it. Space utilization. I can now tell you how often that space is occupied. I can tell you how many people are in it. If Greg's got a huge office, this is the office we've assigned to Greg, and Greg's in it a tenth of the time, and when he sits in the back corner. I can come to Greg and say, "Hey, you know what, bud? We love you, but you've got 800 square feet and you're going to get 400. And we're going to remodel his office and this becomes a conference room." Okay. If you're familiar with some of these office spaces now where they're the cubicles, that's how they do that. That's what they're tracking. External systems integration. Everything today, the lighting controls, if I know where they are, I know how many people in the room, I can control your HVAC. I can control my security. I can do all those things because I don't need their sensors now because we have them in every single fixture. Security is the same kind of a play. Now, not only can I tell you who's in my building, I can tell you exactly who's not supposed to be in my building in the middle of the night and what room they are and where they're standing or where their path has been. Okay. So circadian support. This is kind of a new one, but it's really, really interesting. And you guys are going to start to see it as our aged population continues. So circadian is changing. Circadian rhythm is making your lights go white to blue to very warm, depending on the time of day. I will tell you in my house, I have this. And when I want my kids up for school, we have a school button that we press. And every light in the house turns very bright blue. And it jump starts the kids. And at 9 o'clock, all the lamps in our house go to 2700, which is very red and warm, and it helps them go to sleep. Okay. They're doing that you're starting to see this in memory care. A very big one. If you guys are having the memory care facilities being built out here, Avamere, right over here, is on the front of this. Because what they're finding is that they can use certain colors, help Alzheimer's patients. And they're building memory care, they're building hospitals now to not just in colors of white, but color. And they're doing it because as the medical research is coming out and saying, hey, we can help with mental acuity, we can start making these changes. That's available right now. But these are all things that I can do with individually addressable fixtures. Okay. So I talk a lot about how great this is. And then we come down to how do I get you guys to be able to sell this? So let's talk about it. So incremental lighting costs or incremental lighting upgrades. So if I took this out today and you guys sent one of your electricians or a lighting tech in and he used an LED kit. Okay. Do you know what the labor difference between making an LED kit and an LED kit with an integral sensor into it is? Want to take a guess? Zero. Pops out of a box, snap it in the ceiling, plug it together, and I go. And it's ready to go. If you added it as a particular brand new fixture and we add it, what I would tell you is it probably adds $50 to $70 to have the drivers. But as I mentioned earlier, what's happening is more and more and more people are getting into it. And what happens when that happens? The price goes down. As soon as Lithonia and Cooper and Lutron and Genlight, the Signify guys, GE, all the big players are in the market. Now it becomes competitive. It's no longer $150 adder. Now it's, hey, I need to get it on the job for my installer who likes Acuity or Cooper, whatever flavor you like. So that the price of that material is coming down and it's becoming more available. Lower risk. So what happens when you guys come in and you change this out and it doesn't meet code after you install it? Who pays for that? I tell you right now by the look on your face, hopefully your rep says, oh, we'll help out. No, it falls on you. And then you fight it out. But if I say to you, hey, here it is. If there's something that needs to be changed, gentleman in the back of the room that says, hey, I want to change this conference room and I want this to be state of the art. And he and you sit down and you work out the greatest thing in the world and every fixture is individually addressable. And he turns around and finds out that the IT guy has a different idea of how this is supposed to be. The general manager of the facility has a different idea how it's supposed to be. Traditional wired system means you have to come in and rewire everything. Luminaire level lighting control means you walk in and you reprogram it. And if you have one of these today, that's your programming tool in most cases. Okay. Probably the neatest part about this is the smallest investment if you want to try it out. We're all working on jobs from, hey, it's a lighting tech runs out and he's changing an aux sensor in a wall to, hey, we're building a school. You can, because the way these systems work, you can put them in a couple of rooms, see how they work. And I would encourage you, try everybody. Not only the light fixtures, but the controls. See what works. In the two systems you're going to see today, they work on a minuscule level, and they'll go as big as you want to make them and put those together. And I left the word future proofing in here because it sounds really good. But LLC, network lighting controls, nothing in the world is future proof. But what it is it's forward looking. It's forward thinking. We're going to give your customer as much proof, as much protection as they can. No one in this room knows what Bill Gates, what used to be Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos. We have no idea what any of those guys, the world could change tomorrow and we go in a new technology comes out, whatever that might be. But today, if I can do this very simply and give you what you need, we're giving him the ability to change this space for as long as the fixtures are available to go. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to play a video right now. And if you guys don't know who Jim Benya is, Jim lived in Portland for forever, and Jim is really in it. We don't really talk about who he is. Jim Benya basically invented commercial daylighting, which is kind of neat. He designed most of the buildings at the University of Oregon, the ones in the 80s and the 90s. He developed he designed all the buildings at Lutron's headquarters. Now he teaches at UCSD. But great guy and kind of a fascinating story. So we'll play this and see how it goes.
Any type of control system, you've got to take into account what the I want to control and why? I would think I probably have as much experience with lighting. There's pretty much in, but I've always used a lighting control approach. Some of them were targeted at the median, some were targeted at efficiency, some were aesthetics and living. Don't start. And it's the churn of lighting controls that is probably the most difficult and frustrating part. I think very well of Luminaire level lighting controls. It's a very rational control system. And that's one thing lighting control systems in general do. It is by itself. It will work by itself and it doesn't need any additional input. And if something goes wrong with it, I fix it, replace the parts on back in service. There are tremendous number of spaces in which makes a good idea. You think of healthcare and clinics, there are all kinds of office environments, meetings, actually so many spaces where the simplicity of that and in fact they would really well this age advantage. To me, what makes the LLC such an important innovation is it is cost effective because you save on labor, materials, simple maintenance. One of the big deals. Someone who's trying to maintain building is energy efficient. It provides the right amount of light and luminous needed. And it's easy. You pop in a Luminaire, you've got power, you're done. We used to think of it as a lot more because lighting used to use 10 times more energy. What we need to optimize is simplicity and maintainability and long-term reliability, low-cost maintenance. And I come back to LLC. Remove the for any type of control system.
With that being said, what do you guys say we go put our hands on some products? That's not, you go ahead and go first and we'll get the rest of the stuff fixed up.
Go ahead and start it, Scott.
All right.
Yep.
So yeah, like I was saying, so this is Avion and there's a few different types of sensors here. You got this one, which is your motion and daylighting. This one actually, it'll see you and register daylight, but it'll also feel you coming. So it's a microwave and occupancy sensor. And they're very small in size. So let's say the type C kits that we were talking about earlier, if you were to use a type C kit here and implement one of these, you'd be able to have your addressability in each fixture. And that's, I've done some LLC like that when they don't want to switch to a whole fixture and they might want to keep these troffers intact and really future-proof them as well. So the things of the older days are lighting control panels. I'm sure you've seen them. All of a sudden somebody does something to one room and the whole room's can't control it at all. So the new way of lighting controls is usually, it could be a phone, it could be a tablet. Usually on each job we'll supply a tablet, do the drawings, supply the tablet. So when we get out to the job, we can control it, you know, and if it, whether it be a maintenance guy who or woman who creates their account and then you go commission it and hand it back to them when they're done, give them a little training and then let them know you're always there for them to, if they have any questions. But this is just simple. So instead of routing everything to a lighting control panel, it's a Bluetooth node in these that talk to a full Bluetooth mesh system. So if you want to check those out, there's a left and a right. And there's also this LLC, but yeah, you can dim everything. that way. Yep. And they're also working with these microwave and daylighting. So these two, this one would kind of go behind a lens, and this one a lot of times will go into a troffer and be really cleanly embedded. And then here's the ones that'll be supplied where it's if you're just going to use maybe one sensor out of 6, but that wouldn't be LLC, and you wouldn't get your full rebate at that point. You would only get a incentivized if you did a power pack. And this, you would only get one incentive. But let's say you're doing 6 fixtures and you implemented these, then you're getting 6 times the rebate essentially. So they also, I don't know how many wireless switches you're using as well. But yeah, these are all dimmable as well. The settings, you're able to group them, take them up to 100%. But the good thing about this, a lot of the times when you're in a intricate room that maybe has A, B, C, D, E, F, G dimming zones, you don't really have to think about that in the time of design. Of course, you need to have one per switch, but when it comes time to putting it in the building, these switches can go essentially wherever you want. And a lot of the times, some classrooms, they'll have one in their desk, but these are completely wireless. There's a new code talking about using kinetic and ditching the battery, because when the battery fails down the road, then they're like, oh, what's going on? But the reason for that is a lot of people are using cheap batteries.
Okay.
These have 2 camera batteries that last actually 10 years, but some were failing earlier. But essentially these are Bluetooth nodes, and inside of each one, which makes them addressable here and here. So you have an internal fixture adapter that you can put in. Sometimes you might have already LED 0 to 10 volt fixtures, but then there was no controls. So sometimes you can aftermarket add these and get rebate, but also give somebody the able to control them and make it easy a lot of times. So this here is this is your remote access bridge. So a lot of people have a gateway or an Ethernet where you have to tie everything there, and then you're able to make advanced scheduling or changes. Let's say you could change it from your computer at home if you had their login info and you had this plugged in. So a lot easier than having to tie a backnet and Ethernet into your room. You just plug this into a receptacle, make sure it works with the building mesh and it's not too far away, and you're able to access and make changes from anywhere.
Oh, wow.
And that's great because a lot of times you can set something up to spec as new construction, but once the building's open and people have their preferences, you might be going back to make some changes. Or let's say it's 5 hours away, you might not have to go back at all. So that's the ideal situation there. And yeah, so like I said, no routing to a lighting control panel, which saves a lot of time, a lot of labor. And I mean, you can just, if all you think in wireless or kinetic switches, you got your 4 square box, you got your MC Romex connector, you got the wire to get it there, you got the box to house the power pack, all that. You remove all that when you go with LLC. So sometimes the cost might look a little higher, but essentially it's labor. It's essentially like these type of LLC is a type of prefab, and we all love prefab. Labor's hard to get, and you need as much help as you can get on time and labor savings. So I just say if you utilize LLC with prefab, and you can save a lot of time, money, and really make it addressable and scalable down the road as well, future proofing, like Bruce said as well. But you can also see sometimes this one's got an emergency relay circuit on it. So when you have inverters in a building, you need to tie an egress power pack to that. So once the building's power fail, the egress signal will send to all the emergency power packs. But this also happens wirelessly with Avion too.
Okay.
So you only need to wire it standard. But if any other questions you might have about the system or implementing LLC in your projects? No.
Very cool. It's new,
Yeah.
new to us. we're working on a bunch of lighting upgrades currently that they've just started having us start using LLCs. So this is a learning curve for
Yeah.
me.
This would be great. Yeah, I mean, you can usually LLC an entire building besides the down lights in the corridor. You know, usually that's the 6-inch down lights that are going through the corridors. That's where the only place where you'll usually have to use a power pack and ceiling sensors, you know. Those would be the only areas, but everywhere else, usually you could LLC. I mean, even though, you know, those high-end linear fixtures like recess, they'll be like a Neo Ray or a Fine Light or a Mark, and they're $1,000 a piece. Well, you're able to, what I do with a lot of mine is I implement these inside of them. So you don't have to try to wire power packs, because sometimes they'll be continuous run and you got egress every 4 or 5. So instead of having to worry about running a power pack to those egress and then running a power pack to the rest and all that extra wiring, you just throw one of these or these inside of it, and then every single linear piece is addressable. So if you needed one side to be controlled like a bill, let's say you got 2 fixtures and there's an A and B zone, you could easily just tie 2 of those without having to actually power packs, which this also LLC makes you're able to make the changes down the road too. So you're never locked in. If you wire a power pack in and it needed change, you have to rewire the building. And once the sheetrock's up, we don't like to go back. But yeah, any other questions, or I'll give you my contact, and we can always design control packages and provide drawings for you. And then you can review them, submit them, and if there's any other questions, just let me know.
Sounds great.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Sweet.
No pressure.
No,
That don't work.
Yeah, maybe.
I think it's a sort of show.
I think we have a fault one. I don't know, it won't turn on. No, I can, so we have one of these mounted on the wall, and then I can use the sensor to manually put it off. But then, once it times out, it'll put itself back on, and then it won't turn back on.
Yeah.
I get back. It's broken, so I have to turn the breaker off, turn the damn lights off.
We need to address that there's something is askew there.
I was like, I recognize this.
We have this,
Doesn't work.
we have several of them in the building. That's the only one that's having issues with.
Yeah, so you've got one of 2 things happening in your building, and let me address that at the end. Oh, excuse me, sorry. And I walk in front of the camera. That was even better. So guys, real quick, I want a couple things. I'm going to talk a lot about Lutron today and the Vive system, so you guys so we can kind of play with it and get a hands on. The fact that you've seen some of it makes it pretty convenient. But I also want to talk about in general. We have a great system in Avion. Vive's been a great system. And it's funny because you said, oh, it's new to us, but we've been doing these in Oregon for going on 12 years. People just didn't know about it, or they weren't universally accepted everywhere. Places like Umatilla, the government wouldn't accept these. They wouldn't accept anybody's product. And that's all changed in the last 2 years. Hospitals weren't going for it. But today, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you guys real quick about Vive, the bigger part. Because if you've got it in your office today and you're doing some of those things, we've got the abilities. There are some things that we can do with it. And do you have a hub in your building? Okay.
I think we were gonna get one, but then we ended up realizing we didn't necessarily need it. So-
Now, is this your building?
Yes,
Okay. So I would tell you that you'll want to get your hands on it.
Okay.
And solely because as soon as you are comfortable with it and you pick that system you like, or whatever you do, bringing people in to show it and to be able to demonstrate some of the things that we're going to talk about doing. you know, it becomes a sell point for yourself. So Vive and Luminaire level lighting controls, what we're really looking at is these, while they're not micro sensor, but you can kind of get an idea of where the world's going. This was 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Okay.
This was 3 or 4. The new devices are about half the size of this. And they go on every single fixture. And you'll see it in about 2 weeks, the next version of this comes out. But what you're looking at is a system here that can go anywhere from a simple switch on your wall with an aux sensor. So in this space, it's literally a simple switch on the wall and some aux sensors. This is a change it out. I send a tech out for 2 hours, program it and move on with our lives scenario. All the way, the same parts and pieces, all the way up to, hey, I can do an entire school building. This is what we're using at the Clackamas Courthouse and Clackamas Town Center, is this system. But what we've done is we've divided it into a classroom. So you've got a window wall. You can kind of tell the difference between those 4. It's very slight. What you're looking at is we've set it up to show in a teaching sense. So the first fixture is your window wall. The next fixture is coming in and going from there. But what it allows us to do is I can come in and I can now say, you know, we talked a minute ago about an AV switch in the front of the room. Okay.
Oh,
You know, and we joke about that. And Trevor, that's a great question. So there's really 2 ways to do this. You do one with a battery or you do one with a kinetic switch.
okay.
You know, where the motion of actually doing the switch creates enough energy that it creates a signal, or you can go with a battery device like this. And what you're seeing is a lot of the industry has gone to, or a lot of the battery folks have improved it, and they're looking at, you're getting anywhere between 5 and 10 years on batteries. And the end idea being, if they can be up near 10 years, it's about the point where they remodel anyways. And then you go back in and you change it.
Yeah.
Or it gives Blue Mountain an opportunity to go in and say, hey, why is my fixture blinking? Or why is it doing X? And on the back of all the devices says, hey, if it's blinking, change the battery. But it gives you guys an opportunity to go back into a client and touch base. But we were talking about a programming device. This system right here is programmed from the phone.
Oh, wow.
See, this is what he wanted to do, but he thought he needed it to program them just by themselves, and then he realized he didn't, so that's why he opted out.
Right. Well, and Trevor, and what's interesting, I'm going to just throw this out to you guys. What's interesting is when you do this, so a device like this, depending on the model you pick, anywhere from $12 to $2,000.
Yeah.
Okay. If I go through and I program and I push a button here and I push a button there and I move my ladder and I do all those things, I'm going to send him out to do it. And he's going to do that, and he's going to do the entire building. You're going to spend 3 days there doing the building. Or I drop one of these in there and I program and say, okay, I want to start programming devices. I walk over the wall switch and I say, okay, this is the wall switch I want. This is the one I'm going to program. It knows the closest power pack to that device, and it starts flashing fixtures. And as soon as it starts flashing a fixture, you now know, am I looking at the right one or not?
Oh, that's right.
So it will tell you, that's the one and you go, Trevor, yep, that's the one I want. Yep, grab. And I never take a ladder and I don't do all those things. And a lot of the systems are moving to 2 ways like this. What these guys have done, the guys like Avion, the guys like Lutron, the guys like Acuity, have come out, and the most expensive part about this entire system is you. Okay. So you now trigger all the devices, the wireless devices, you'll see the little hole on the side. We give you a green laser, and you walk underneath and you trigger with a green laser, and it says, okay, I'm programming it. If I can leave a ladder in a truck when you program a building, but my comment to you is this, and this is why network lighting control is the incentive program that's existing. No matter whose system it is, if I had put this in, now your building's network lighting controls. It is now a rebatable system. What you installed is not.
Yeah.
Adding this, and I will tell you two things. One, the incentive almost covers the cost of the device.
Okay.
Secondly, though, if I took Trevor off a site and said that he's not going to be there for 3 days programming, and all of a sudden I turned it into 4 hours
Mhm.
with a green laser and an iPad, I've now recovered 20 hours of labor.
Mhm.
Pretty easy conversation to have. Okay. But what we're looking at now is these devices are now shipping in these. And what distributor do you guys work with? Do you have one in particular that you work with?
People using. I can't think. The estimator's not.
Oh, yes. Oh, so Safe Market Plat.
Yeah, we use Platinum Acuity.
Okay. So you see, so or North Coast or Crescent or Graybar, whoever it is you guys want to use, or Stuss, or see, they go in, they're now stalking these. Now you call down, and instead of saying, hey, I'm gonna put these in and I'm gonna wire or I'm gonna add the devices. No, or I just put them in the fixtures. I just change the fixtures out. And Trevor, you walk back in, you program it.
So. Because he's already put the rough in, his office isn't 100% done yet.
Uh-huh.
We haven't started using the rebates.
Uh-huh.
Is there the record? Like, half of the lights.
The devices are all the same.
Okay,
Don't care.
okay,
What you need to do is grab Nick Jones
gotcha.
and have a conversation about that device. And take your building
Mhm,
from a simple iMeet code building
mhm.
to now it's a network lighting controls opportunity. And you have a workspace that you can now go in and show off. As silly as that sounds, it's a big thing
Mhm.
to walk in and be able to bring a customer in, and everybody's got and you're obviously the tech guy, the techie guy in your office. You walk in and you go, here, techie guy, I'm going to just walk around. You go play with this for a while. And at the end of the end user says, I have to have this.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be Lutron. It can be Avion. It can be whoever I like, whoever your installers like. And that's the important part.
Yeah. we were comfortable.
Who you're comfortable with. The products, the systems. It comes down to a comfort. How do I reduce the labor? What works?
Mhm.
Does it scale for the size of the building? Some of the systems are great for very small. Some of the systems are really good at scaling up. But those same systems might be a little more expensive because you're buying, you might buying a little more horsepower. You don't need a smaller building.
Yeah.
But when you look at these things, the availability, any of the systems,
Mhm.
between the rebates, between the labor savings, between the efforts, between the fact that you get the materials today and tomorrow, going the old traditional way is not going to pencil. And this is one, and one of the comments earlier was that you need to bring Nick Jones to meet your estimators.
Mhm.
I don't believe that you bring him on our project. You bring Nick Jones in now,
Mhm.
because then your estimators are looking for opportunities. When they were talking about HVAC stuff, if they have not being an HVAC guy, watching Greg get excited about certain products, it was super cool. But if he doesn't know ahead of time to look for it,
Mhm.
see, a lot of times we would go out and present these to estimators. I want your estimator to know ahead of time, here's what it is. Labor it correctly so you go get the job.
Yeah.
I will tell you, the guys that understand these systems are the guys who win the commercial projects because they bid these right. Because everybody else says, I don't know how to bid this. And they're going to bid it like a wired system.
Mhm.
And you don't. And instead of calling the rep and saying, hey, I want you to spend $6,000 to come program it. Well, this in a YouTube video.
Yeah.
And you can come pretty dang close. And I know Dustin will help. I know ALR, the Lutron Stearns and the folks out of Eastern Washington, if you're up in Eastern Washington, all have people that are willing to help. Take those same dollars, put it into your bid, put it into your rebate, put it in your program, pass it on to your customer.
Yeah.
and go after these.
And those numbers that were shared up there, that's not only, that can cover the product cost and labor, not all of it. Cover some of that. So all of a sudden you're. It's being paying for some of the labor.
You have lighting techs on staff,
Not,
like LME licensed guys.
no.
Okay. Where we go with that conversation is, so I have an electrician come in, shut off the circuit breaker.
Mhm.
So my LME guys in to change the switches and put these on the ceilings
Yeah, true.
because they can.
Yeah.
Our school districts are doing this. What they're doing is they're having the maintenance guys go in and do the classrooms.
Mhm.
And then we have an electrician come on the backside and add in the Vive hubs and pull the Cat 5 and those things. This is how you do backnet if you want to do backnet. Talk about building integration. That device right there is what all those guys over there missed out on. The cheapest HVAC occupancy system on the market is right there. All joking aside, we sold a ton of them to train because it was cheaper than their own system. Train figured it out and they blocked it, but
All the wireless.
the wireless, it was all the wireless stuff.
Okay.
My encouragement to you guys, grab your estimator, grab, maybe a lead installer if you've got somebody that really is a lighting person. Have your rep come out, take the product, take their system, walk through it, and start looking at small projects. You don't have to get crazy out of the gate. Pick the one, work out through the things. But if you're doing retrofits right now, you're doing this.
Mhm.
I can tell you right now, I'd be willing to put money on it that we could change this building out for less money than it would be to wire equipment, even though it's a drop ceiling. Just not even a question. And better yet, you take that money, you put it in your pocket, or you pass on the customer.
Oh, true.
Well,
Split the difference.
split the difference. Well, and the one that we, and Greg talked about, we were talking about hospitals and we were talking about retirement communities do those things. You go and you get one and it worked. And all of a sudden now you're doing Avamirs all over the Northwest. And so I will get comfortable with the product, make sure that it's being serviced, make sure it's scalable to what you need, and go with it. Any product questions? I was listening to Dustin's presentation. It's very funny. They're very, very similar. This is not a mesh network. This is kind of an interesting, that device will go 70 feet in any direction. So 10,000 square feet through anything. And I mean that safe walls, that kind of thing. But this will scale up where some of the systems, that's one of the big ones. Some of the systems will only scale to a floor.
Okay.
This you'd be able to scale multiple. We are presenting this at are you going to Wamoa? It's the Washington maintenance facilities guys, but we do the schools. The schools love this because I can also, if I have one of these and I have my VPN set up, I can now turn my lights on from my house.
Oh.
So we do a lot of the schools districts down there and we don't even go to the school district, go to the maintenance group.
Oh, yeah.
And I go to the building operator and said, I go, what happens if it's a snow day? And he goes, I drive to 12 buildings and I turn the lights off. Or I override it. And I said, well, what if I sat down and I showed you this and what's that worth?
5 hours. $50.
Well, and they were laughing 5 hours in the snow and it's whatever they call it, hazard pay overtime. And I started laughing. I go, so I paid for these the first snow day. So again, I encourage you, Nick is a phenomenal asset. Grab Nick, have him come in. He can help you find the right people. The other thing with these though, once you get one person in looking at it, then you can start looking for everything else. And that's the big key is grabbing all the HVAC stuff, all that stuff at the same time. It's getting you in the building.
Well,
You can use this, get in cheap and then go from there.
We're, this is the power estimate, so we're ETO. But Amy was flat, is our.
Amy Marshall's the doll. So the reason I am here today is because of Amy Marshall.
Oh, there you go.
So
She
even though,
wanted to make sure I was attending this one.
so what's actually, I'm so glad you just said that because so Amy calls me still, even though I'm not the neutron rep anymore. And I was in Oregon and not Eastern Washington, but I will help Amy Marshall anytime she wants help ever. And you know, we go from there. So
She loves these. She absolutely, she's the one that's, any project that we've looked at for energy shots. These are the things.
is this what you have that room that's having a problem?
Yes.
Okay.
So ours only has
Are we
two buttons.
sum up? Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hey, for those of you that are online, we're pretty much done with today's network lighting controls, Luminaire level lighting controls presentation. Thank you very much for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you can do this from anywhere, and that's the thing.
All right. So hey everybody, thanks for joining us. I'm Chris Smith, on the network's technical team. So kind of adjacent to all the field staff, like Nick. If there's any more technical demand, they call me in. My primary focus is HVAC. We have Nick Goodman here today from Mechanical Sales, and he's going to talk to us about their high efficiency HRV solution. And we wanted to have somebody come out here with a tier 2, or what we're calling a tier 2 HRV. So that's 82% or better SRE, and that's sensible recovery effectiveness. Yep. Wow. Can't believe I did that. And that just talks about how effective HRV, or heat recovery ventilator, is at recovering heat. But anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Nick. And just wanted to say, if you guys have any questions or like want to touch anything, I think we're
but
pretty
all
open to it,
means,
right?
guys
You
are
know,
welcome
yeah,
to
get in here and check
push
it out.
buttons and cycle through menus and
Yeah.
stuff.
It's a real
Have
neat
look at
solution,
it.
but yeah, don't be afraid to get up in here. So
So what do you guys know of HRVs currently? Anybody? Everybody familiar, or getting a lot of, see a couple head shakes? So it's a relatively simple concept. There's two paths for airflow. One is exhaust and one is outside air for replacement air in the building, just to keep the air healthy for the occupants. And what we do is we pass that across to heat exchanger. There's a bunch of different ways to do that. You can do that with a runaround coil setup. You can do it with a plate and frame heat exchanger, or you can do it with a wheel. This particular unit from Swigen uses a wheel that they manufacture, so they can meet that efficiency target. They can also meet 0.5 watt per CFM fan watt usage, which I think ties in with that tier 2. In Washington, it's a they call it something different, but I don't know where I was going with that. Wow. Anyway, sorry, they manufacture their own wheel. There are two different types of wheel. There's total energy, or there's just sensible only. The difference there is a desiccant that coats the wheel, that absorbs moisture from the exiting air of the building and then puts it back into the incoming air. The big deal, or high level view of what it does, is basically we're just trying to recover as much of the energy from the lighting, the people, the computers, the heat that we've already paid for, and keep that in the building where we can. So as far as the unit, Swigen, so Swedish manufactured, and designed and then assembled in Canada and then shipped over here to the US. Couple things on the outside, you'll notice the doors are mismatched. That's somewhat on accident and somewhat on purpose. So Swegan has a declare label, a high focus on sustainability and recyclability. So the door on the left is painted, which requires more energy to recycle. They have to remove the paint and then recycle the metal. The door on the right is a magnesium coating, which is similar to zinc coating, but has 10 times the lifespan. Oh yeah, by all means. And I'm just working my way in.
I'm gonna go back. No, 3 seconds. All right. There we go. Like, just to be clear, like before we go too far, like, can I just get a show of hands of everybody? Does everybody feel like they know what this does and what the purpose of it is? We feel pretty good? Okay, that's like, I just wanted to make sure we got
Okay.
like we got that like
Yeah, hopefully
you-
yeah.
yeah, I think you did good, but I wanted to double check quick, but sounds like we're
Okay.
all right.
Yeah, so we're just combining our outside air that you'd have in an economizer and our local exhaust fans and trading energy. Is that a simpler way to put it? So outside of the unit, we'll speak more of the kind of sales pitch options of the unit. So the doors have 2 position locking mechanisms. So the first one, when you move the door, it relieves the pressure so that the door doesn't swing back and smack you in the face. It's a good time. You learn real fast to put your foot right behind it. So we'll start with outside air coming in. So bottom left-hand corner, we have MERV 13 filters. Swegan has a gasketed filter rack. So each of these 2 blue handles actually force that bag filter up against a gasket, so we have minimal leakage. MERV 13, just because it's a higher MERV rating, captures more, protects the wheel from dirt. There is a slot for a 2-inch pre-filter to extend the life of those bag filters. That's up to the customer or the engineer. We go through our wheel at that point, and then we have an ECM motor. One thing to note about their motors, it's one of the few that I've heard of that you can actually put new bearings on. Most of the ones I've worked on, you kind of just scrap it and put a new one in. Then coming the other direction from the top right, that's our exhaust air. And for most of the HVAC guys, it seems kind of wonky to have a filter there. The filter is really just to protect the wheel. So same thing, MERV 13 bag filter. We have our wheel, another ECM motor pushing air out of the building.
And like everybody follows that. I mean, you have 2 different paths, and then those airstreams are crossing as this wheel is turning, and then you're exchanging heat between the 2 airstreams.
Yep. So it's just a mesh of aluminum. That aluminum picks up that heat, and as it rotates slowly into the other airstream, the heat's given back to the space. Back to wheel efficiency. So AHRI was it 1061, kind of the standard for ERVs, is roughly 60 to 64%. And then your tier 2, that's the 80 to 85% roughly. Swegan advertises their wheel efficiency around 80, but it's typically higher, as high as 85%. One of the big things to get that efficiency is this stepper motor right here. And we're able to get down to 1 RPM. So that wheel is turning extremely slowly so that we can transfer as much energy as possible. Some other manufacturers just use a drive, and those drives can't go down to that low an RPM. They'll maybe drive down to 30% of the motor speed. And so it's just one of the added features, gives us that additional efficiency.
Does that vary? That varies based on airflow?
It varies based on discharge air temperature. We haven't dug into the controls yet, but the controls that are in the unit are custom manufactured for Swegan. It's their own controller, their own programming. And the unit watches a whole host of pressure sensors, temperature. So if you guys have ever seen like a large built up energy recovery unit with a controls package on it, there's roughly, what is it? We decide 26 points that are being watched by the control system. All of those are built into this unit from the factory. So we see the incoming air temperature, we see the pressure across the wheel, we know the fan speed, we know the pressure and airflow for the fan, supply and extract. And all of those things come back to this controller that the technician can look at, make adjustments. There's a whole host of controls points that you can set to, set the unit up the way you want for balancing or energy efficiency for your control strategy. It's a great question. Sorry, what was that? Oh, condensate. We don't really defrost in our area, so it's not as big an issue. Where if it were a plate and frame and we had to defrost a little bit more frequently. So with our wheel efficiency being so high, we're constantly thawing the wheel, and then we also we're rotating through that exhaust airstream, which keeps the wheel from frosting. There's a huge logic built in there to make that as energy efficient as possible. We watch the differential pressure across the wheel as opposed to time and temperature or some of the other control strategies. So we're actually seeing whether frost is building up on the wheel. It's a good point to talk about preheat. So some systems in certain areas require preheat so that they don't frost up and don't have excessive defrost cycles.
The minimum operating temperatures.
We are good down to, so we don't even start thinking about defrost, I think, until negative 14 degrees. So we did a calculation based on ASHRAE standards for Spokane, the office that I'm out of. And 9 hours out of the year, we meet the temperature requirements for considering defrost. So we might defrost once out of that. And let me know if I'm diving too deep, because we can make it real technical or we could make it pretty basic too. I apologize, the wheel's not spinning currently just because it's taking in 70-degree air and exhausting 70-degree air. But if we had a temperature difference, the wheel would spin, and I can manually spin it here at some point. Does anybody have any questions so far?
I just wanted to know about the range of CFMs on this.
We can do up to,
Range
I
of
think
CFM.
it's 16,000 CFM. So this is the RX5. Currently we're running on a high-speed fan, and that's roughly about 700 CFM for this guy. And that just strictly has to do with what we could fit in the back of a van.
What's the smaller end of the range?
We can do all the way down to a couple of hundred CFM with a CASA unit, which is our smaller residential or light commercial unit. It's the same configuration, same wheel, same efficiency, just a smaller compact unit. So you'd see that in multifamily residential, stuff like that.
Like
Classrooms, if you had a spot where you wanted to spot ventilate, that's another one that I've been looking at.
You guys seeing more of it go into schools?
Well, I came from a school district and we had lots of energy recovery ventilators. I haven't seen any of the tier 2 equipment yet, although we did just do like a Christian academy with two Swegan units and VRF. And then that opened us up to some incentives because of the high efficiency of the VRF equipment plus the DOAS efficiency.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. Like normally this technology is going to be in symphony with some other type of system for heating and cooling. And so like benefit of this, not only, are you gaining that efficient heat recovery, you could also potentially downsize existing equipment if you don't need as much capacity because you have so much heat recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can subtract whatever it is that you're recovering from your total energy needs and then downsize your heat plant or your chilled water plant. To tie in with that, so the company itself partners with most major VRF equipment manufacturers. So if you need post heat or post cooling, they will work with them and have a coil set up already ready to go with the EXV on it. All you have to do is tie in the wiring and the piping, and then that acts as just an additional zone on the VRF equipment. We can also do hot water, chilled water. We can do electric post heat. Configuration wise, top and sides, pretty normal. The unit itself is made for single-sided access, so you can push it up against a wall, fit it in a closet. That's pretty standard. All of the service is done from the front here. On the service side of things, both of the fans are interchangeable. So the way it's wired and configured, the wiring harness itself is what tells it which position the fan is in. The fans come out pretty quick with like a crescent wrench and some wing nuts. So you just loosen a couple things, the whole fan slides out. Molex connectors for all of your connections for the controls and the load. So no electrician needed for field repairs if you're in an area where that's a thing. So yeah, it's extremely serviceable that way. The first time I saw it, that was one of the things that jumped out at me from a building maintenance standpoint, was a guy can fix it in a matter of minutes.
I'm sure does it have differential pressure, like checking that across the filters? And
yeah, so the amount of sensors are pretty wild. So there's a pressure transducer here with some tubing checking across the fan volute. That's checking the pressure across the fan and then calculating that into CFM. There's another pressure transducer here that's checking the pressure across the wheel. Same thing for this fan. So we have pressure across the fan plus CFM. The amount of information it'll give you is almost ridiculous. Temperature sensors on both sides. For anybody that does hospitals, cross-contamination on wheel heat exchangers is a big concern. We don't want any of the exhaust air that might be laden with germs crossing into our ink. There's a little damper here that limits our cross-contamination well below. I think we're 1/10 of the requirement required for a hospital application. Anybody have any questions about that part so far?
Kind of curious how the damper works too.
Basically just redirect some of the airflow back to the sweeps, and then that keeps the air from blowing through the sweeps. There's just little brush gaskets on each side, if I remember right.
Temperature, like summertime.
Well, that it'll operate in, or that we can meet. I haven't looked that one up. I would imagine there isn't one, but yeah, typically in our area, we're usually more concerned about being able to heat the space than cool the space. Yeah, I'll have to look into that one. I'll give you a card, and if you want to email me, I'll do some digging and see. Yeah, that one I haven't dove into. Anybody want to push buttons? No, you guys are nervous. You can't break it. Like I was telling Chris, I took it to the school district I came from, and the energy manager that I worked with got out his 10-in-1 and just started taking things apart. And we also use it as a trainer for other folks when we sell it. So I think it probably help you guys just kind of see how much information is available, how many different settings you have.
Come on up. Come a little closer, guys.
Sorry, yeah, we're gonna kind of block the camera a little bit just because it's a small So there's two different ways to kind of set up the equipment. So the equipment comes standard with Wi-Fi. So my laptop's hooked up to it as well. Or there's did I pull it too far? Come on, little buddy. I'm gonna make it turn off. So this controller either can be left on site with this bracket, so you could mount it on the ductwork next to it. A technician can take it with them, like our in-house technician has one that he carries with him just in case this goes missing. Or you can do everything through a computer. So for energy management systems, we can pretty much accommodate any management system that's out there, Metasys, BACnet, Modbus, for larger commercial buildings. The most common being BACnet over IP. So basically you just put an Ethernet cable in there and then you can control it with your BMS system. Here, Chris, I'll let you push buttons.
Well, it's cool. It's got an alarm log.
Yeah,
And
so
you can configure that to like send emails or
you
whatever
can
else,
you
or-
can have it text you can have it email you. It'll do energy calculations, so it'll track your energy usage for you. You can print monthly energy use programs. Let's see if we can make it stop. Yeah, turn off.
That's for when you have a wildfire outside.
Could pressurize the building.
Yeah,
Controller.
correct. So one of the great things there is you can actually set a percentage of differential on your extract versus your supplier. You can set it based on CFM. So if you're trying to maintain building pressure, it's a matter of just pushing a couple of buttons and hitting enter. Commissioning is extremely smooth. When you're attached with your laptop, you can go through and you can name. So like this one's named gold. They all come factory named gold. But you could call this ERV1, ERV2, ERV3. If it was a rainy day, you just take your laptop back to the stairwell out of the rain. As long as you can reach the Wi-Fi signal, you can set all your parameters from a dry place. You can save all of that based on either an SD card or a USB card, which is nice. Like we talked about post-commissioning. You can save everything that you did at the time of installation or startup, load it onto a card. Either the tech saves that or you tuck it somewhere. It'll show you what the factory settings were, what they were changed to. You just select that file and hit enter, and the whole unit goes back to the configuration the day you set it up, which is really nice because, like we've talked about a little bit today, people sometimes like to think they're smarter and make adjustments, or they're trying to make do. So they make changes just to get by, and then they never have time to go back and change them. And so the system might not be operating as efficiently as it should be just because somebody made a few, tweaks here or there just to get by. And I'm equally guilty of doing that.
I saw this data logging in here. Does that come standard with the?
All comes standard. I can't remember the length of time that we save. I want to say up to a year, if I remember right.
This is a pretty cool feature. Don't see that very often built into units.
Well, and that's kind of part of their thing. So they're also passive house certified. And one of the big things with passive house is not only do you get a grant to build a passive house, but you have to actually benchmark your building. So having this built in makes that pretty easy. You can pull all your reports and actually show that you're doing what you designed to do, and make it through that process and get your grant.
How many data points does this thing have? Like incoming, outgoing temperatures, or do you know what all it has the capability of logging?
A ton. The sky's kind of basically the limit. So besides being able to control just the unit and what's built into the unit, there's expansion modules that take over boiler rooms. If you wanted to control the valves for post heat or post cooling, it'll take care of those all on its own. If you had preheat, it'll take care of that. You basically just plug in a couple different modules and some sensors. You can set it up for medium static. So if you needed a duct pressure sensor 2/3 of the way down the duct, they make a factory sensor for that. And so we can maintain higher static, like 1.5 to 2.5 inches of water column. That's becoming a little less common because we want to try to decouple our incoming air from our fan coils to save energy. At least in Washington, that's a big part of the energy code is decoupling your DOAS system from your fan coil systems so that you're just heating just the replacement air and dropping it into the space rather than having to run the fan for the fan coil to push that air back into the space, if that makes sense. So you reduce your fan load by doing that. You don't have to have an extra fan running. The local space zone will only turn the fan on and heat and cool the space when needed, which reduces your energy footprint.
Where's this thing made?
Sweden. So there's a
That's convenient.
computerized factory that builds most of the panels. They ship them over and then it's assembled in Toronto,
Okay.
I believe, over in
What's it,
Canada. Don't quote me on that one either. That's you're gonna stump me today.
Look at previous years. Are you able to do that?
I think you could probably save it, to tell you the truth. If it only has a year, you probably would want to save that file.
Oh, well, you can
And
put it,
then-
you can put a thumbstick in there and save that first year, and as long as you're just making sure it on your calendar to go check it.
Yeah, and I haven't dug that far. I mean, honestly, most people are kind of taken back by the fact that it does the energy calculations and tracking. So that part,
I mean,
let me find out for sure for you.
be pretty familiar with data logging, or not really? Yeah, like
I can see what you're talking about though. If you had an ability, I mean, in most cases, if you were replacing a standard ERU, you would want to have a year's worth of data on that existing one, and then you could put this in and then track your energy usage.
it's
see
pretty
what you
common
saved.
to have like a limitation, on how much memory it has or how long it can record for, and so like, yeah, to be able to record a year is like that's pretty
Yeah,
like wild
especially
for
with all of
for the industry. Like normally, like we're gonna like when an energy engineer is gonna have to go out and actually like deploy loggers on something like this on the airflow or whatever to get any kind of extended information to be able to compare. So, but yeah, they could do a year and you could like download it, or
maybe
maybe you could
close to a year, and then I think you
record
can just
longer.
download the file and,
Yeah.
and clear the memory and
Yeah.
start over. You should be okay.
Huh.
Let's see if we turn it.
Extract air, is that a Swedish thing
Yeah,
versus
so
exhaust?
it is yeah, it's a European thing. So you're extracting air from the building and then supplying air to the building. It's
Commonly
just,
we call it exhaust.
yeah, we all just call it exhaust here in North America, but and it's interesting even when you talk to their technical service manager who's from Canada. He's so ingrained with extract air and supply air that the few trainings I've gone to, yeah, it took me a minute to catch on to what he was talking about.
What's that low speed, high speed?
So currently
about,
we're
like-
just running it in manual mode.
Is that just like a demo kind of, or like?
It's basically demo mode. So you guys will see the wheel's gonna start to spin.
Is that high speed a reference to the fans, or is that to
fans?
Okay, yeah,
Yep, that's just the fan speed. But they're fully modulating, so it's not just high or low. It's just because we're running in a demo mode. Has a pretty pointed sequence of operation. So it will start the extract fan first and preheat the wheel, and then the wheel will start to spin and the supply fan will kick on. Another thing that I didn't mention, so in all of their algorithms, the fan knows how often it's spun. So an issue with wheel heat exchangers, so they're self-cleaning, but only if they rotate every once in a while. So if they sit stagnant for a long period of time and air is blowing just across one side, it's going to get dirty. So it tracks the amount of time that the wheel spins and occasionally rotates it just so that it cleans itself.
If y'all wanted, you could come in here and
Yeah,
actually
if you
look
guys
at the material of the wheel. If you just wanted to see kind of what it's what it's made of. It's pretty neat to
basically
see. Looking in the
aluminum
side.
that they roll into a great big wheel and they corrugate it to give it passageways. One of the things that Swigan has done is they put a huge emphasis on low pressure drop to get that 0.5 watt per CFM. So it's the passageways are custom designed by them to get that lower pressure drop than some other wheel manufacturers. Most ERV, ERU manufacturers are buying their wheels from a third party and then just bolting them into their units. This is one of the few where they make it in-house.
That's very rare.
So this has a sensor, it'll tell you when to clean the filters.
So the filters are pretty awesome on this one. Each time you change the filters and when you start up the unit, you actually calibrate the differential pressure across it.
Yeah.
And then it tracks that and tells you when the filters are dirty. So then you put in a new set of filters, you recalibrate that sensor for the new filters. So you're looking at real-time filter loading as opposed to just a switch that's been set at 1.5 inches of water column.
Yeah, get that pressure static.
And that same thing that adds to the energy efficiency, because as long as the maintenance personnel know that it's time to change the filters in real time, as opposed to doing it on a cycle and maybe, you know, one unit doesn't necessarily need that filter change every 3 months, but the other one might need it every month. So this will actually tell you, you know, I don't know how much you guys know, the old gold standard was just a basic differential pressure switch, and you assume that the filter has a 0.5 inch of pressure drop initially, and you add 1 inch of water column to that. So you set it at 1.5 inches across the filter, and then it's a manual reset thing and just sends an alarm, says, hey man, it's time to come take a look. So yeah, it's a neat feature in it. Trying to think of where else to go. We can dig pretty deep, honestly.
How are we doing on time here?
Got about 15 more
Yeah,
minutes.
10, 15.
Trying to think.
You
what else
ever
we
see
can-
one of this little belt fail here?
So the belt is actually a lot easier to replace than you
You
would
can see
think.
this, yeah, belt driven here for the wheel, so that's wrapping all the way around off this little motor here.
And so you can see it's that stepper motor is stepped way down and that wheel is just barely turning. Yeah, so to replace it, you can take a lighter, or there's a special heating tool. When it's time to replace it, when it does wear out, you just clip it, heat it with a lighter, hook the end of the new one around, and then you push the wheel around until you get the other end, heat it with a lighter and stick it together. It's actually relatively simple. Yeah. Same thing. If let's say you lost it behind it, just tape the new one to the front, roll it around, and then heat it and stick it together. Yeah, it's same thing with these foam gaskets on the sides. You just pull the old one off.
It's like
tape
you
the new
open the
one on.
maintenance manual from Swigon and there's a dude on there just with the lighter.
Yeah, I mean, that was basically the way the conversation
Wow,
went. It was
far
like,
out.
well, what do we do here? And he's like, well, you could buy the fancy little heater, but a lighter works just as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you
Huh.
smoke, just pull your lighter out of your pocket. Well, now you can see it's moving extremely slow, which really does set it apart from other folks. I mean, 30% would be closer to, you know, what we saw earlier. And of course it was stopping just to make
Yeah.
me a liar.
Yeah, we could see it though, that it can run real slow.
Yeah. So if you guys kind of want to wander around and take a look and kind of pick out pressure sensors and Molex connectors, just so you guys have an idea kind of how it all goes together.
How about cleaning it?
Cleaning the wheel is pretty simple. You can manually make the wheel spin and just a brush and a vacuum.
Yeah.
Yep.
And about how long the life usually, I mean, I know that's gonna depend vastly on the exposure, but you mentioned in schools, you know, in schools, is it 5 years to replace the wheel?
I've had wheels last a lot longer than that, even from different manufacturers. There's really not much to it. It's just a big piece of aluminum.
Yeah.
So there's not much to fail on it. Chris asked me earlier about it, and so I tried to do some digging to see what the lifespan of desiccant coating was if you went with total energy recovery. I haven't found an answer to that one yet, but I can definitely approach the factory and ask them what their their standard is.
Yeah, one thing we were talking about, maybe if you were like buy some kind of like corrosive airflow, like or you're on the coast or something, maybe, or you got salty air, like you know, maybe you're gonna have, I mean, likely gonna have some kind of
The last,
increased
the last
degradation, but
one that I heard was the Pullman Aquatic Center. I don't know if I'm supposed to name names, but
Forgot it already. Yeah.
yeah, so they had a wheel heat exchanger that served their lobby and locker rooms off of the pool. And that wheel didn't handle the corrosive air coming in from the pool area. The staff would prop the doors open and all that humid chemical laden air would come in and hit that wheel. And that one's the only one in 20 years or so that I've heard that actually failed.
because of air quality.
Obviously,
yeah.
mostly just the chemicals.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the chlorine and
So you've got a
stuff in
pretty
the
thick
air.
wheel too. You've got quite a life there.
Yeah.
What do you think? Kind of seems
that-
like everybody's getting a little restless.
Yeah.
in
Do you
here.
guys have any more questions?
Any more
or-
questions? We can wrap her up.
Yeah.
Feel free to come. Yeah,
As a whole on
play
the,
around.
the topic of energy recovery, I'm a huge believer. So I came from Spokane Public Schools, the second, now third largest school district in Washington. And looking at House Bill 1257 in Washington, we were calculating out EUIs for different buildings. And it was pretty easy to see that the buildings that had energy recovery were meeting our EUI, which is your energy use index. And it's just based on cost per square foot. The buildings that didn't, that had just standard gas-fired makeup air units, they were way over and they were gonna end up costing the school district money. So it's a worthwhile technology. I think it really saves folks money.
On that project you're talking about, what would you say the CFM was, like, ballpark?
Which one?
Well, how about with this unit? What's this unit here? What's like the rated CFM for this?
This guy I looked up earlier, it'll do up to 1300 CFM. On high right now, it's doing about 700 CFM.
So that's
with
like a
the fans at
$4,500 incentive.
30%.
That's what I wanted to get.
Yeah,
at,
so like the schools that I worked at, I did a just a practice run selection. They were running about 30,000 CFM on a medium static system. And that was just a basic 3,500 square foot elementary school. So that was their prototypical building. There was about 20 identical buildings in Spokane.
They're
all
their
set up.
outside air load, their ventilation load. Was
Yep.
that? And so yeah, that's like at that current incentive, that's like $105,000 incentive. So like, you know, it's a pretty sweet deal that they're rolling this out right now. Yeah. So, and you know, with the new ash rate guidance, you know, post COVID and you know, everybody really trying to focus on like high indoor air quality, like it's a really big sell. And yeah, with the new incentive, even better. So
Yeah.
keep it in mind.
All right. Thank you guys. No.
Cool. I think we're good.
All right. Sweet.
Thanks, y'all. Yep.
All right, everybody. Thank you. I've got some business cards.